Technology? Are these kind of new? Are these new?
Okay, I'm going to turn things over to Will Martin. Good morning, everyone, to get our meeting started.
HTFC.
Thank you, Chairman Weiss. To begin, we note the following. Jesse Olzak, representing the Director of the Budget, is participating via video conference from the Division of the Budget's Conference Center at the Capitol Building, room 131 in Albany. And Hope Young Watkins is participating via video conference from HCR's Buffalo office at Electric Tower, 535 Washington Street, Suite 105. In accordance with the Open Meetings Law, notice of our locations has been made public. The public has the right to attend and observe the proceedings from these locations. To open the meetings of the HFA Board, the AHC Board, and the HTFC Board, I ask for motions and seconds to call to order, consider each agenda item, and later adjourn the meetings. Is a motion?
So moved.
Second. Second, thank you. I'll now ask for individual votes from members of the HFA Board, the AHC Board, and the HTFC Board, starting with Chairman Weiss.
Aye.
Commissioner Visnauskas.
Aye.
Mr. Olzak.
Aye.
Mr. Curtis.
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre.
Aye.
Ms. McEwen.
Aye.
Ms. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Young-Watkins. Thank you. To open the meeting of the HFA Finance and Program Committee, I ask for motions and seconds to call to order, consider each agenda item, and later adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
A second from Commissioner.
Second.
Thank you. For the individual votes of each committee member, we will accept the previous votes of Chairman Weiss, Commissioner Visnauskas, and Mr. Olzak. We will use these votes as items are considered throughout today's meeting unless a board member decides to vote differently or needs to recuse themselves. The meetings are officially open.
Okay, I'll turn things over to President Visnauskas for her President's report.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I was just going to talk for a minute about DC. So some of the team here and I went down to DC last week on Monday for the NCSHA annual sort of congressional legislative conference, NCSHA being all the other 50 heads of the HFAs for the other states. And had meetings and then had a series meetings sort of together. And then we all did Hill visits in sort of a coordinated effort to be talking about priorities. NCSHA and the HFAs have a set of sort of shared priorities, which overlap somewhat with what we do, although not all HFAs are the same. So not all HFAs have the same priorities. We are very focused, we, as you all know, and you see through here, through the different boards, on tax exempt bonds, on Section 8, on home and CDBG, weatherization. We did a series of meetings with mostly staff from Gillibrand's office, Jeffrey's office. We saw Claudia Tenney. I introduced her at an event. Tom Swazi. We saw Richie Torres. So, both kind of sides of the aisle talking about the importance of the work we're doing. It will happen sort of in DC in two. Some of it is sort of budget based and will happen sort of on the budget side. And as they start to talk about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and they get into reconciliation, it'll happen sort of on the tax side also. I think, and we are very focused and we don't have a ton of control on the, and in terms of advancing the governor's priorities on the Democratic side. But there is a lot of bipartisan support for things like Section 8 and the tax exempt bond programs. And we talked about those with everybody and people, I think, see the values of those. It's always hard, I think, in the work we do to know whether people, when they see a building being built, really understand that that resource came down in a tax provision from an IRS program that trickles all the way down, and that those things are important. And without them, we can't build all the new housing and preserve all the existing housing we do and provide all the first-time homebuyer mortgages we do. But it's good. It's good to go sort of walk the halls and talk to people and remind them of what's important to us and that we're here and that all of these programs impact people meaningfully. I think we remain very concerned about the Section 8 budget as in the continuing resolution that's there now. And as we go into more budget talks about, as folks all know, sort of a flat line of the Section 8 budget is the same as a cut because of inflation and costs. So we will continue to partner with the city, to partner with the governor's office, and to be sort of on message with our advocate partners and continuing those conversations in DC. A lot of the stuff that's on the agenda that you'll see today are things that flow down from those programs. So we didn't come away with any, sort of good or bad news from it, other than people are aware that things like the tax credit program are a priority, that they have a lot. It was very heartening to hear Claudia Tenney, who spoke to NCSHA, talk very much about the tax credit, the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act, which is sort of the main bill, a ton of bipartisan support, and she's a big supporter of it, that would expand, would change the 50% test and expand the 9% credits are two big things. And she's a big supporter of those, so that felt good, but it's sort of hard to know who really has sort of authority and decision making and impact in the federal sort of
any
frame.
specific conversations about bonds or any of the resources that we use being threatened, or organizing to message around it?
I think on the Democratic, well, let's see, or organizing. Yes, I think there's a ton of organizing to be advocating. I'm not sure. I think on the Democratic side, there's obviously not enough influence, and they're not really in the conversation. So that's sort of unfortunate. And then I think on the Republican side, again, I think there is people do acknowledge that, tax credit investment is, and Claudia Tenney sort of who's on our most senior person on Ways and Means talking about the importance of that is great and is the voice we want. It's just sort of hard to know at this moment what voice is important and how that's really going to work. But we will continue, and this is going to be a, now for the next 6 months thing as we get into the president's budget coming out and get into the fall, trying to figure out where people are and what's really being cut and what's really being proposed.
What's happening with staff cuts at HUD?
Though we have heard, certainly in the New York field office, which was a staff of, I think it was 23 or 28, is down to either 3 or maybe 1. There was a letter this week that went from a Republican in, I think, South Dakota and a Democrat from Rhode Island. I think it was their letter that people are writing to the secretary and writing to other folks saying, like, these field offices are very important for us. They are who landlords call. Whether or not some of this litigation about people being fired and then coming back, plays out as in people coming back or not, I think we'll have to see. We haven't, it hasn't hit us sort of parochially yet. That, we've called someone and the phone just rings and nobody answers. We still have some people there, mostly sort of one level removed from us, I think, who are processing things. We were on a call with a housing authority that said their person at HUD is still there and is working with them on doing a RAD transaction. So there are people there, but we are very concerned, right? Those are big staff cuts, and probably more to come with the reduction in force memo. So,
what about CDBG and home?
So CDBG and home are a big deal for, sort of have like two hats. Like for the state writ large, there's a lot of CDBG and home. For us, sort of at HCR across our programs, we are not huge recipients. We get about $30 million of home and about $50 million of CDBG because it's entitlement community based. I would imagine those programs will, they're very longstanding. They have an enormous amount of bipartisan support, but it also just seems like everything is on the chopping block. So I think we don't know. There's also this conversation about furthering the block grantingness of it, right? And pulling it out of the entitlement jurisdiction and having it sort of sit with the states, which has some political impacts, I think, nationally for some states. And would be obviously a big staffing impact to the extent that they for every state, right? Red and blue, they centralize these things. That would mean a lot of administration for a lot of states that don't have big staffs to do those things.
What about the Section 4 stuff that Enterprise administers and other things like that in terms of supporting the larger technical assistance and ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, Section 4 got cut, which is grants to intermediaries like Enterprise and List, which then granted down. Also, the CDFI fund wildly reduced. The United States Interagency Council on Homelessness also drastically reduced. I mean, they're all things that support kind of the ecosystem, and there's probably 10 more I haven't read about yet that support the ecosystem. I think those are really incredibly impactful, right? They are going to weaken the system that we use to deliver what we do. It's not, as you all know, we approve this stuff, but there's 57 people in every single one of these deals that actually do all the things, and they're people that are often funded by all of those sort of grant by grant, program by program. I think I think the Section 4 cuts are happened, and I think they will be quite. They're going to have a real big impact, I think, on the work.
Okay.
I need a happy. I don't have a happy end.
Yeah, how about a happy
end? And back to Steve.
Okay, on that happy note. So we'll begin with the HTFC agenda. Item 1, the adoption of the relevant sections of the consolidated minutes listed in the agenda, which shall be deemed approved absent corrections. Item 2, increase in Housing Trust Fund award. Alexa Sewell, Senior VP, Multifamily Finance Development, will present the item. Alexa? Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
I am standing in for Brett Hebner, who's the head of our 9% team. He's up in Albany this morning with the governor announcing our 2024 awards. It's very exciting. So this first item is a request to swap in $2.9 million in new construction program funding for the middle income program funding that was initially awarded to the project. The project sponsor is RUPCO, and this project is located in Tannersville, which is near Hunter Mountain. The initial programming envisioned being able to achieve 100% AMI rents, but increases to the AMIs have made that level of rents in this particular geography unachievable. But because our middle income program doesn't allow us to serve lower incomes, we're proposing to swap in a different funding source, which would allow us to lower rents for 6 of the units. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Okay. Will?
Before the HTFC board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3, increase to Supportive Housing Opportunity Program Award. Alexa?
Okay. This is a supportive housing one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a request to make an increase to the original SHOP award for this project of $1.7 million. This is a 49-unit project in Buffalo called West Side Homes. This project has struggled to meet its budget because of security issues at the properties and vandalism. So they're in need of some additional funding of $1.7 million. We anticipate the project will be able to close within 6 weeks.
And note for the record, just Tyler, in addition to the recusal of Chairman Weiss, Ms. Young-Lockins has also recused herself from this vote.
Thank you, Will. Now before the HTFC board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you. Item 4, new construction program award. Alexa?
New construction program award or housing trust fund increase, right?
This is the
RUPCO?
RUPCO deal. Yeah.
It's
Okay, hold on one sec.
But yes, I think it is called the new construction award, right? You're swapping in for.
item 4.
Did you already do the RUPCO?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
sorry.
thought it was, I thought we
This
would
is the
do.
RUPCO, but is that the first one you did?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I
Okay.
apologize. So my first description was for this project, which is an increase to swapping into for the middle income units.
And now this is Mount Hope Walton.
Now we're doing Mount Hope
Okay,
Walton.
so we're
Okay.
flipping 2 and 4 on the agenda.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
Okay, Mount Hope Walton. So on this one, we're requesting an increase of $1.3 million in the Housing Trust Fund program funds that were initially awarded for the Mount Hope Walton Apartments. This is in the Bronx. The project was awarded in July of 2021. This project has experienced cost increases because of interest rate increases and construction delays. We are working with HPD on this project, and we anticipate they're also going to be increasing their subsidy in the project, and we also anticipate this one to be able to close in 6 weeks.
So is the award that our increase, is that conditioned on HPD's increase?
It's not conditioned on it, but we are confident that they are also coming in with an increase. I'm not sure the status of their award.
So maybe we can report back on that. It'd be good to know
Sure.
that they committed their amount. Okay, any questions?
Now before the HTFC board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted. Additionally, I would like to note for item 2, the recusal of Chairman Weiss. Does Ms. Young-Watkins have a recusal for that item as well?
No, sorry, that's,
I'm not recusing.
yeah, no, Chairman Weiss has only recused himself from item 3. So
Okay, great.
both Chairman Weiss and Ms. Young-Watkins have recused themselves from item 3. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Okay, item 5, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG Economic Development Awards. Crystal Loeffler, President of the Office of Community Renewal, will present the item. Crystal?
Good morning. The Office of Community Renewal makes approximately $15 million in CDBG funding available in an open round application for CDBG eligible economic development activities. This month, we are advancing 3 award recommendations totaling $900,000. They include 3 $300,000 awards, including to Cattaraugus County and Ulster County to both launch new microenterprise programs, and $300,000 to Montgomery County to renew and continue its existing microenterprise program. These awards are expected to assist 50 microbusinesses and create jobs that benefit low and moderate income individuals. Full details are in the memo and briefing sheets, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Crystal.
Just to reiterate in a passing, are we advertising that these are obviously these are important funding sources that are going to communities that, like, where job creation and stuff depends on money flowing down, obviously, from the state? Just making sure that we're, like, advertising correctly around doing this work and really promoting the agencies when we're making these grants. I think it's just important.
Crystal, did you hear that? Is there like a signage-y thing that goes on? Like on there's some of our other sites?
I think given the nature of, like, these aren't all retail businesses, right? So it's not necessarily a sign that gets affixed to a property, but we try to encourage as much press as possible and review press releases, participate in any press events that are available once the businesses are actually selected for assistance, right? Like at the time of our award right now, we don't necessarily know which businesses are receiving these grants. The counties will run these programs and then make local decisions. But yes, we try to encourage and participate in as much press and publication of information as possible.
James, did you have something else in mind in terms of?
It depends on, like, whether, I don't know if they're doing advertising, these businesses to say, like, supported by the state of New York CDBG program and things like that, and encourage mentioning like the state's support for their businesses as
Or
part
like on
of
their website or something?
on their website or on these businesses. I just think now's the time to, message better where government can be really effective in delivering services and supporting businesses and jobs.
Absolutely agree and understand, and we will review what we're doing and work to see what else we can add.
We can come back to you on that too.
Okay. Call the vote.
Now before the HTFC board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution is adopted.
Great, thank you. Item 6, home buyer development awards. Crystal?
Thanks. OCR launched a request for applications last year to offer up to $10 million to support a home buyer development program using New York State Home Program funds. This program allows non-for-profit developers to request funding to support rehab or development of up to 4 homes for sale to low and moderate income home buyers. This activity is intended to support small projects that may not be able to access the agency's larger development resources. This month, we're requesting board approval to award up to $1.7 million in home funds and enter into agreements with the Oswego County Land Bank and the Kingston City Land Bank to construct 7 affordable housing units for sale to households with incomes at or below 80% of the area median income. Oswego is installing 1 modular home and rehabbing 3 homes, and the Kingston City Land Bank plans to build 3 modular homes. The board memo and briefing sheets provide more detail, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
That's great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Now before the HTFC board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Great, thank you. Item 7, annual payment to Housing and Development Software, Inc. for funds management system. Crystal.
This is a funds and grants management software package that's been used by the CDBG program since 2001. We are requesting authorization to pay this $37,000 annual payment for the contract with HDS or Housing Development Services to cover the software licensing and maintenance fee. The software is essential for operation of this large federally funded program, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Now before the HTFC board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay, item 8, Small Rental Development Initiative, SRDI Awards. Madeline Fletcher, VP Small and Mid-Sized Development, will present the item. Madeline?
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
This third round of SRDI funding was made available in December through request for applications. It allows nonprofit housing organizations to apply for funding to preserve or create multifamily projects of 4 to 20 units, generally affordable at or below 80% AMI. In particular, SRDI provides resources to really small projects that, because of low market rents, because of a lack of other sources, would otherwise not really have a source. For applications, we review project need and impact, the development team experience and capacity, the readiness to proceed, other financing, and the funds they're leveraging. And we received seven applications. 2 program staff score the applications, and we use the average score to sort those applications. The RFA made $6 million of the $7 million allocated for the year available, but the quality of the applications is actually really quite good, and we had a number of applications that really were shovel ready. So since we had additional funds available in this year's allocation, because some other funding was available from previous years, we are making this request for the top 4 scoring applications for a total award of just over $7.2 million. That will result in 33 units. 8 units will be preserved in Queens, and there will be the new construction of 25 additional units. About $8.3 million in other funding will be leveraged by this award. So the recommended awards are to Rock Affordable Housing in Erie County, Sustainable Communities in Washington County, Seneca Housing in Seneca County, and Our Children, Inc., which is in Queens. We think that these all meet the goals of the program. They all can be complete within our 2-year contract period proposed, and we're happy to recommend them. I'm happy to answer any questions. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Madeline, have we done anything with Sustainable Communities before? I wasn't as familiar with them as the others.
No, they're pretty new. They were an organization formed sort of locally with a couple of local groups, Flatley Reed, who does some real estate development, and some community groups kind of banded together. They're working with TAP, who is definitely familiar to the agency.
Yeah.
So they're team assembled.
Thank you.
Now before the HTFC board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you. Item 9, creation of the Manufactured Home Advantage Program Pre-Development Fund. Madeline?
Hi, everybody, again. So I thought I'd do a little overview of this program. We have another project on the board agenda today, but we don't do a ton of projects with these funds. So since about 2019, about $5 million has been allocated annually to do work specifically with manufactured home communities acquisition, infrastructure improvements, work replacement of homes, that kind of thing. And we have about a pipeline of about $17.5 million under review or in construction, again, one of which you'll hear about today. But frequently we get requests that are sort of short-term emergency requests from either communities, the manufactured home communities themselves. Sometimes they're co-ops. Sometimes the Department of Health calls us and there's a park in peril. So we've been trying to think about how we could create a small pot of dollars that could respond really quickly when there's an opportunity for a preservation purchase, getting an appraisal started, when a phase 1 environmental assessment is needed to see what, sort of the situation is, physical needs assessments, that kind of thing, that we really want to sort of deploy in a really short term without sort of having the, sort of standard board process underway, so that we can really prevent things from like shutdowns of parks from happening because somebody's intervened. And we've been working a lot with around the state to kind of build a network of nonprofits who are sort of willing to come to the table, willing to step in and assist tenant organizations or cooperatives who have these sort of urgent needs. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can sort of deploy dollars to sort of help stem the sort of emergency situations that are coming up. So our proposal is to allot $500,000 of manufactured home advantage dollars in the aggregate for the making of small grants, not exceeding $40,000 per project, for pre-development and technical assistance awards that would enable these communities that are sort of in peril to have nonprofits come in and sort of help determine what needs are, determine situations, help avoid displacement. And so, like I said, the funds would only be available to experienced nonprofit organizations who are familiar with HCR, who are acting as a sponsor or a partner on behalf of a tenant organization, an existing co-op, or in some cases where they themselves are looking at the potential for acquiring a park to undertake sort of the rehab and rescue of the park. The funds would be, really short-term technical assistance, third-party reports, environmental investigations, engineering services, if there was like sort of emergency physical need. And from a process, perspective, the idea would be streamlined. We have this sort of tranche of funding approved at the board level, and then we would go through an application process with the nonprofit applicants. We would assess them, based on, a predetermined set of criteria, an itemized budget, all of those things. And then we would bring it to the SVP for Homeownership and Community Development, Dina Levy, for approval to make the small awards. We would potentially then, if the projects proceeded to a bigger award for infrastructure improvements and all of that kind of stuff, these funds could be potentially wrapped into that award. So we think that this sort of solves a problem that, sort of bubbles up frequently. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Now before the HTFC board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you. Item 10, fair housing testing contracts. Nadia Salcedo, Director of Fair and Equitable Housing, will present this item. Nadia?
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
This is for $4.2 million for our fair housing testing, outreach, and networking program. We've had a program like this since 2019. And luckily last year, the legislature appropriated double the amount to $4 million, which couldn't have come at a better time because these fair housing organizations, as you probably have read, had got a late in the night letter from HUD saying we're cutting your funding. So they are really appreciative for this. We'd already had a NOFA in place to get this in line, but it's really going to be helpful for the state and for these organizations. The 6 organizations are CNY Fair Housing Justice Center, Housing Opportunities Made Equal, Legal Assistance of Western New York, Long Island Housing Services, who got 20% of their budget cut, and Westchester Residential Opportunities. So $4.2 million between these organizations. I can answer any questions.
That's great.
Yep, it's really great.
Now before the HTFC Board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Item 11, amendment to the CASO Document Management, Inc. contract. Timothy Austin, Deputy Commissioner, will present the item.
Or we might have Lisa. Sorry, Lisa Pagnosi.
Or Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, everyone.
All right.
Good morning. The contract with CASO for an electronic records management system is being presented to the board to extend the term of the contract for a one-year period. This contract was procured via a RFP process issued by HFA Sony May in 2017. The RFP allowed HTFC to enter into a contract with the vendor selected by HFA and Sony May on comparable terms. HTFC entered into a contract in 2019, and since inception of the contract with CASO, CASO has successfully scanned over 7 million images and has allowed HTFC to destroy over 1,700 boxes of records covering a total of 2,338 square feet. In November of 2020, in light of the COVID pandemic, the members authorized an amendment to the contract that included expanding the scope of services to enable staff at the Office of Rent Administration to conduct more work remotely by scanning critical cases and increasing expenditures under the contract by $250,000. We are currently working on an RFP to replace this vendor. We intend to issue that RFP within the next couple of months. And at this time, we're asking approval from the members to extend the term of the CASO contract for a one-year period.
Make it sound like we're hoarders, Lisa. 1,700 boxes.
How many square feet do we get for this?
One at a time.
It's great.
Thanks, Lisa.
Now before the HTFC Board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you. Item 12, Gallus Hill and Black Bear Hollow Manufactured Home Communities MHAP Awards. Burke Blackman, Director of Distressed Asset Initiatives, will present the item.
Good morning, everyone. So this is a request for $8.5 million in Manufactured Home Advantage Program subsidy for the acquisition and preservation of two adjacent manufactured home communities in Ulster County that function as a single project. They have shared infrastructure systems. They're known as Gallus Hill and Black Bear Hollow, and they straddle the border between the towns of Ulster and Hurley, just across the thruway from Kingston. Together, the two communities contain 94 permitted manufactured home sites and 4 stick-built apartments for a total of 98 regulated units. The sponsor here is Ulster County-based nonprofit, the Affordable Housing Conservancy, which proposes to acquire the two parks and undertake an infrastructure overhaul. The scope of work is based on a physical needs assessment and includes repair or replacement of water, sewer, and stormwater systems, new roads, upgraded electric service, and site lighting throughout, a new 30-kilowatt ground mount solar installation, and new landscaping and green space features, including playground, benches, and weather shelters. The Conservancy is new to manufactured housing, but has prior experience with agency funding. They're the co-developer on a 9% senior project currently under construction in New Paltz, known as Harmony Hall. And they're also currently administering a $4.5 million Weatherization Assistance Program award from the agency. So this project will help preserve affordability for 72 existing households and can also accommodate up to 26 new homeowners earning 120% AMI or below. Lot rents will be maintained at current levels for existing homeowners and capped at the FMR-based standard for the MHAP program. Rental units will be set aside for households earning 80% AMI or below, with rents similarly capped at 80% AMI. The project does enjoy local support in the form of a $400,000 grant from Ulster County's Housing Action Fund, and other financing sources include a $1.6 million construction and permanent loan from CPC. In summary, the project will help preserve and maintain a critical source of affordable homeownership in Ulster County and enhance residents' quality of living with upgraded facilities and amenities, and we're happy to recommend it for funding.
On this project, I would similarly recommend, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of benefits that we're doing investment in this community. And I think marketing the fact that we are investing in this community is a very important thing. And like distributing a flyer to all the residents saying, we're paying for this, we're paying for that, we're paying for that, I think is an important part of marketing.
Well, these ones I think follow our, although Burke and Madeline, you can remind, these follow our marketing guidelines, which means there's a big purple sign out front that says this, but different than the micro enterprise, which I think.
But I think here, like, there's real, it's not just that we're doing it. I think it's like, there's clean water, there's sewage, there's things that are going into this that like may not be recognized. I think there's a real outreach to tenants that they should know that this is your tax dollars at work kind of thing. And I think more aggressive outreach on some of these projects is important.
You almost need a social media campaign to support it as well.
Yeah.
And the local, Facebook page for the zip code or whatever they do.
Yeah.
Just getting it out there.
The residents will definitely be notified of the transaction and the funding. And we do anticipate there will be joint press with the county around this project. And as the commissioner mentioned, signage is a standard part for this program and the other programs we oversee. So we will work to get the word out.
Okay. And Tyler, I'll just note for the record that both Chairman Weiss and Ms. McEwen have recused themselves from this vote.
Thank you. Now before the HTFC board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Okay, thank you. Item 13, fiscal year 25-26 HTFC administrative budget request and programmatic budget outline. Stacy Mickle, Director of Financial Administration, will present the item. Stacy.
Good morning, everyone. We have a new system here in Albany, so I'm hoping you can hear me. Let me know if you cannot. So I'm leaving the microphone where it is. I'm here today to present the 2025-2026 administrative budget request and programmatic budget outline for your consideration and approval. As you may recall, in December, I presented the authority's budget office required budget and financial plan template. And today I'm presenting the more detailed administrative budget that was prepared in consultation with HTFC's executive leadership. This budget of $71.8 million represents the anticipated needs of the corporation for the upcoming fiscal year. For 2025-26, we are anticipating an increase in both revenue and expenses. For revenue, we anticipate flat funding for the PVCA fees, but an increase in our cost recovery fees for administering the various federal programs. Our total revenue is anticipated at $82.5 million, which will allow for a surplus of just under $11 million at the end of the fiscal. This increase in cost recovery for federal programs is due in large part to the implementation of the time distribution system within the current timekeeping system for HTFC employees. TDS allows for units that provide support to the federal programs to be able to allocate their time to these programs, thereby allowing HTFC to receive reimbursement for their time. TDS was implemented on April 1st, 2024 for many of the administrative units that we had not historically received reimbursement for, including the finance unit, legal, procurement, environmental, fair housing office, and DECO, for the Davis-Bacon and compliance. This allocation has allowed us to increase our fee revenue by over 30%. On the expense side, we're budgeting an increase in personal services. As you may know, historically, HTFC's administrative budget excluded the former Governor's Office of Storm Recovery staff, as their expenses were fully covered by the programmatic dollars of the CDBG disaster recovery. As CDBG-DR Sandy continues to wind down, some of the former GOZER staff are being utilized to assist with other programs, such as CDBG-DR IDA and other federal programs. And as a result, we need to include these staff within the administrative budget to be able to capture the time and expenses spent on the other programs. In addition to the 14 GOZER staff that are increasing our PS, we are also proposing a partial funding of the 12 staff for the source of income discrimination enforcement unit that will be based in the Division of Human Rights. I believe that was approved by the board last month or possibly 2 months ago. This unit will be fully funded with HCB administrative funds, so increases to both the revenue and expenses are reflected. We are also anticipating an increase in fringe expenses related primarily to the increase in other than pension employee benefits, the post-retirement benefits that are not pension, increased costs related to actual retirement payments we have to make, and increased costs related to the health insurance premiums. We are also anticipating an increase in contractual services, much of which may be funded by federal cost recovery. Within the budget presentation is the anticipated programmatic funding. This one's a little bit hard to assess because it's based solely on the proposed executive budget presented by the governor in January. So until the state budget is passed, we will not know the exact amounts allocated to a DHCR and then what amounts of that actually will transfer to the trust fund to administer. And then the federal amounts that are presented in this budget are the current contract values, the signed contracts we have with the various federal programs for CDBG, for home ARPA, CDBG CV, et cetera. The full budget presentation is in the board materials, and at this time I am requesting approval of the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. I am happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thanks, Stacy.
The one question maybe is for you, Ruth Ann, it's like, obviously there's a big shift in the governor's budget around sort of where the Mitchell-Lama work, there's some of the other stuff, and a lot of it's flowing into the City of Yes budget item. I mean, how do you think that will impact some of the other programs, like the land banks, money's been cut and other things like that? I mean, how do you think, a lot of the single family, the local assistance has shifted towards single family, but I'm just curious about what you think on the City of Yes, the focus on the City of Yes from a budget item, how that will impact some of the other programs.
I mean, the governor's very committed, committed the $1 billion there. I think the legislature and their one houses came back and restored, I think maybe what you're seeing here as some of the funding that we had gotten so we got a bunch of programmatic dollars last year. We're still in the process of spending them. So we as the executive don't ask for additional funding for those programs because but in the one house budgets that were released last week, there is annual funding included for some of the other, for the infill, for the block by block, for a lot of the other programs. So I think we'll see over the next 2 weeks what ends up in the final budget, but I don't think that the $1 billion for the City of Yes is going to have a negative impact on our programmatic budget. I think at the moment we feel pretty good that there's a lot of support for capital generally across all the programs. But it's, we got, I don't know, Jesse, we got 12 days, 13 days, we'll see.
My question was going to be, when's the state budget going to be done so you can have the final number?
Yeah, when is that going to be done, Jesse?
When it's done.
Okay, thank you.
Now before the HTFC board is a resolution transmitted in connection with the item. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Great, thank you. Okay, the remaining 11 items on this agenda are information items. There will be no presentation unless requested. I think we'll move right into the HFA, AHC agendas. Item 1, adoption of the relevant sections of the consolidated minutes listed on the agenda, which will be deemed approved absent corrections. Item 2, amendments to 111 Nassau Street, direct sale bond purchase agreements, and Mark Price, Director of Capital Markets, will present the item. Mark? Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to present an amendment to terms for the financing for 111 Nassau, which was an 80-20, which is an 80-20 project in the financial district at the corner of Ann and Nassau Streets. The original financing was in 2011. It was done through a public market deal. There was a 3.5-year tender date. When that tender date came up, the deal was refinanced into a private placement with TD Bank. Right now, there is approximately 60 million of bonds outstanding that are held by TD Bank. There is a tender date coming up April 1st of this year. TD Bank is willing to extend their private placement date for another year, but they do want to make a change to the interest rate on the bonds. The change includes increasing the percentage of the floating rate index. These bonds are variable rate bonds, so they're increasing the percentage of the floating rate index from 69.75% to 79% of SOFR, and increasing the spread to that index from 165 basis points to 250 basis points. So those are the three major changes to the terms of the bonds, and we're seeking your approval to allow for those changes. Happy to take any questions.
Is the change in SOFR, this change in SOFR rate just a function of where taxable and tax exempt are trading at this point?
Because it's a private placement, I believe that formula is driven by their tax, how they're valuing the tax exemption.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
Now before the HFA Finance and Program Committee and the HFA Board are resolutions transmitted in connection with this item, assuming the motion and second previously recorded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution is adopted.
Thanks, Will. Item 3, amendments to Saratoga Heights, City of Binghamton, Broome County. This is a consent item, making technical amendments, and there will be no presentation unless requested, and I'm recusing myself.
Sure. And note the recusal of Chairman Weiss from this vote. Now before the HFA Finance and Program Committee and the HFA Board are resolutions transmitted in connection with this item, assuming the motion and second previously recorded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion is carried. The resolution is adopted.
Thanks, Will. Item 4, additional subsidy for West Beth Artist Housing, City of New York County, and Russell Ubley, Vice President of Multifamily, will present the item. Russell?
Hi. Good morning, everybody. Never happy to have to come back to ask for more money. There's a legitimate reason for this. I'll give you a little bit of a background. Real estate tax exemption is the core issue here. Just a reminder, on December 12th in 2024, the members here authorized financing of West Beth Artist Housing with our HFA Multifamily Preservation Program subsidy, MPP. All along and at the time of the approval, the project had been anticipating a full tax abatement through the New York City 420A program. That allows tax exemptions for nonprofit-owned housing that has social services components or homeless set-asides. The project was anticipated to be eligible for that abatement by increasing its homeless set-aside restrictions in a new 40-year regulatory agreement that HFA is to execute upon our financing closing, replacing the existing HPD regulatory agreement. The project currently holds an Article 9 tax exemption, a partial tax exemption, excuse me. It's a tax credit project as well, which is a problem in terms of the tax exemption status. It's getting an influx of about 30 million to 30.3 million actually in historical tax credit equity by virtue of its historical landmark status. I don't know if you're familiar with West Beth Housing. It's down in the West Village. It was originally built in 1860, expanded to encompass the whole block, and it was originally used as Bell Laboratories in 1925 and through the 60s, at which point it was converted to what its current purpose is, which is low-income affordable housing for artists. Anyway, it was determined that the project was not eligible for the 420A tax abatement because of the tax credit partnership that's being created with a for-profit entity. JP Morgan Chase is the investor within the ownership structure. That's required in terms of being able to set up a tax credit partnership to bring equity into the project, and the equity is important for the financing. But to be clear, the project does currently have a partial tax exemption. It has had one since 1999. It was renewed in 2009 through HPD as an Article 9 partial tax exemption, which is basically shelter rent, 10% of the shelter rent plus some additional fees on an annual basis. There was a new HPD regulatory agreement that went with this in 2009. The project's current tax liability under this Article 11 exemption, I keep confusing my exemptions. Article 11 exemption between the past years about $1 million a year. Most recently, the project was hoping to convert that partial tax exemption into a full Article 11 tax exemption through HPD, which would benefit the project, obviously. HPD went through the motions of trying to approve it, but they couldn't find justification to convert from the existing partial to a full exemption, what's been in place since 2009. Therefore, the anticipated budget fell short. We are now experiencing a gap because the expectation on the exemption is going to be higher than what was originally planned. The exemption will continue to be around $1 million a year with the annual escalations that we underwrite to of 3%. So the increase in the tax liability, along with increases in some hard costs and resulting reduction in available cash flow, the project can now only assume a smaller first mortgage from the senior lender that we were expecting with Freddie Mac and Merchants as their servicer. The gap is about $12.9 million. So the reason I'm here is to request additional HFA subsidy to help cover this shortfall. In an amount not to exceed $13 million, an increase of the previously approved loan amount that we went to the board with back in December, which was about $43.2 million. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Russell.
Have we had other projects that didn't get the 420A because of the tax credit structure as well?
Yeah, but typically they wouldn't, if knowing going in that there's going to be a partnership, they wouldn't apply for the 420A unless the tax credits are going to be certificated and not part of the actual ownership structure if they're going to like an outside entity, which we're seeing more and more on the state side, but typically not through the city programs.
Okay, thank you.
Now before the HFA board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item, assuming the motion and second previously recorded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. The resolution adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to pull items 5 and 6 from the agenda this month and bring them back to the board at a later meeting. Item 7, Ocean Crest, City of New York, Queens County. Thomas Abbott will present the item. Good morning, Thomas.
Hi, Thomas.
Yeah, sad to miss those Manny projects, but we'll have them back for you next month.
Thank you.
Didn't quite come together. So Ocean Crest, this is a request for $17.6 million in AHUB funding to support the construction of 89 units in the Far Rockaway in Queens. One of those units is a supers unit, so it's 88 units for affordable sale. This is, as I said, in Far Rockaway, sort of at the west end of the neighborhood's downtown. It's immediately adjacent to a really large and beautiful park, and pretty close to the A train and the LIRR. So sort of far out of the city, but still within a commute. The project initially went into their ULURP envisioned as a 9% rental project, but because of sort of the history of affordable housing in the neighborhood in recent years, local elected officials pushed for a homeownership execution. So they switched gears and have gone forward with this AHOP execution. We're working with HPD here through their Open Door program. Our sponsor here is the Community Builders, a really prolific nonprofit developer. They're partnering here with Nehemiah HTFC, who is, we've sort of seen come back a couple times through these smaller homeownership projects. They are, longstanding provider of affordable homeownership in New York City. Lender here is CPC. This is an 8-story building. There's a really substantial focus on resiliency here due to the proximity to the water, the location in the Rockaways. So everything's raised up, all the utilities and everything are on the roof, all the standard stuff that you need. Let's see, total cost here is roughly $800,000 a unit, and cost drivers here, larger units due to the homeownership nature of the project, the resiliency work, and the fact that there's deeper foundations. GC is mega, and it's achieving 80% AMI as an average across the building, which they've done their market study, and it looks like that'll work. Great, I'll be there.
The one question I had is I noticed that the developer fee is under the Open Door program is capped at $50,000 per unit.
That's correct.
Is that the only program where there's actually a cap on the developer fee per unit, or is that something that's more widespread across HPD?
Let's see. I honestly wouldn't be able to speak to the standard developer fee calculation methodology on the rental side. I think typically it's a percentage of TEC, but I know they're kind of moving away from that to try to disincentivize, they're just as a cost control mechanism.
Yeah, just because, obviously in all of our projects, we've seen developer fees float up with inflation, float up with cost of everything, when in fact, I think this is an interesting model around capping the developer fee at something per unit, because it's certainly, this is at 6% when we typically see deals come in at 12 to, 11, 10, 11, 12. But anyways, I just wanted to note that.
The tax credit program provides one, right, in the program itself from the Fed. So there is sort of, it's sort of comes down from that. The agencies cap those in different ways in terms of paid and not paid, and it's 15%, but some can be kept lower. I think here, because this is sort of new line of, not this somewhat new line of work, I think more broadly, there is no federal source to provide a developer fee, so we have to pay for it. In typical subsidy deals, we're not paying the developer fee, it's coming out of the equity, right? So I don't know if I would say this is it's a cap, but really it's just sort of the provision of a fee in a program where there otherwise is not a federal sort of directive about what a fee should be in order to get developers to be, reimbursed for their expenses. This is, I would, it's far below what sort of a typical,
That's
right?
why I was noting it and the cap rate, but I think that's something, that is one of the aspects that has continued to make units more and more expensive. Obviously, there's more risk and inflation and all these other things, but just I thought it stood out.
Yeah, in the tax credit program, a lot of the fee is deferred, as you know, so it's the amount that's paid is different than the total. Some developers lend it back in as a way to.
And this is a condo, so it's a sale, so it's whatever, so it's different because of.
But there's also, other than the construction loan, it's all concessionary financing. So, there's no guarantees, there's no exposure, that should be compensated for.
Yeah.
But does the 5% work on smaller projects? Because I know some of the AHOPs get pretty small.
Yeah, so that's not a cap that we've put in place here. Our cap is a 12% cap on calculated, excluding some costs. But we have seen this, they're going through the process of trying to get a new open door term sheet approved with OMB at the moment because subsidy levels are just from 2019 and just aren't matched with the market at the moment. So yeah, we're seeing this in our New York City projects. This is not on a smaller project. We wouldn't have a per unit cap because I think you could get quite a small fee for a decent amount of risk because you're not paid out until the sale of the homes.
It's the only thing driving a developer.
Yeah,
So, other than an opportunity to develop in a limited rental environment, rental subsidy environment. So.
Thomas, I might.
Pardon?
Oh, you were recused. No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It might be in the memo, but I can't see it. But can you just remind what the actual sales? Oh, here I found out what the sales prices are, just for the board.
Yes,
Roughly where they are.
They're at 80% of AMI, but I can pull them up.
It's $193 for a 1-bedroom, $226 for a 2, and $244 for a 3.
Yep, love those numbers. Just want to say them out loud. They're incredibly affordable
incredibly
ownership
affordable.
in a world where it's hard to.
You just happen to be staring at it.
To get a 3-bedroom for $250,000 is great.
It should be noted, we're selling these at 25%. They're selling them at 25% of development cost, and so that is not a long-term sustainable solution.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
So I'll note Ms. McEwen's recusal for the record. Now before the HFA board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item, assuming the motion and second previously recorded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Thank you. Will item 8, Garvey's Point Block F, City of Glen Cove, Nassau County, Thomas.
Yes, so this is Garvey Point Block F. Request for $11.2 million in AHOP subsidy to support the creation of 56 affordable condominium units in the city of Glen Cove. This is part of the broader Garvey's Point redevelopment. It's a former Superfund site that's receiving quite a bit of, so the agency financed a rental project as part of this redevelopment. There's some market rate condo happening, and this is the sort of affordable home ownership piece of this. We have 11 1-bedrooms, 32 bedrooms, and 15 3-bedrooms in this structure. Average sales price AMI hits 80%. And we're working here with Georgica Green Ventures, who's a frequent collaborator with the agency on Long Island and elsewhere. Our participating lender here is anticipated to be Webster Bank. And in addition to AHOP, there's a couple other sources here. So we've approved them for an allocation of AHC, or they're working on an approval for an allocation of AHC funding. and which will require that the property have a 60-year regulatory agreement. So we're getting some long-term affordability. They're also working with the IDA on a pretty substantial pilot. They'll be paying, something like 25 or 30% of what market rate taxes would be, which is a big driver of the affordability here. The project is also in the final stages of approval for a grant from ESD's Long Island Investment Fund, which would pay for a lot of the infrastructure work. This is sort of a sloping site. There's a lot of sort of retaining wall stuff that has to happen, and it's not. They have to drive really deep piles as well, so there's some hard cost considerations there that can get offset a little bit with that investment from ESD. 4-story building, and it's we're going to get some good energy efficiency here, a LEED silver at minimum. Sales prices on a straight line basis, just thinking about the raw sales prices, do look a little high when you compare them to comps. But a lot of analysis into this market study showed that most of those comps are very old. They're sort of low-rise co-ops in the area, and when you factor in the pilot and a variety of other factors, you're actually looking at a really good affordability as compared to the market, and again, a good capture rate. Yeah, excited about this one. It'll be our first real large investment through AHP on Long Island.
I don't know if you said this already, but it's adjacent to a tax credit deal that was funded a couple of years ago. So it's great sort of going back to the same town that is very open to different types of affordable housing, which I think is great. Although, do all your projects have to be in places that have very deep foundations, because they're very expensive to build? You find some
Exactly. They were just quicksand only development program.
Great, thanks, Thomas.
It's great.
Sure, and I
Just ask a quick
please.
question.
Yeah.
How will they do the marketing? Is it a local nonprofit?
Yeah, CDLI is the marketing partner here. So they're one of the two big nonprofits on Long Island that does this, and they've been really diligent about digging into our processes and asking the right questions, and that's been very productive thus far.
And I didn't ask on the last deal, so forgive me, but do you worry at all about HPD's marketing with the AHP projects? Because that's a pretty big project, so I worry a little.
Yeah, we defer to them, right? These homes will go on Housing Connect. I think they're working with Nehemiah, who has a lot of experience with doing that, and I think they'll also on Ocean Crest bring in almost everybody brings in Restored Homes as a marketing partner in the city, and so yes, definitely pretty large, but there's not a lot of competitive stock in Far Rockaway. It's not something that's been built in years.
Not worried about demand, just bureaucracy.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Sorry,
No, it's a fair question. Bring your chainsaw.
Yeah.
And note the recusal of Chairman Weiss from this vote now before the HFA board is a resolution transmitted in connection with this item, assuming the motion and second previously recorded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolution adopted.
Okay, the next 4 items on this agenda are consent items. I'm going to read them all 4 at the same time. There will be no presentation unless requested. And we'll vote at the end on all 4. Item 9, contract with PJ Mechanical for HVAC maintenance. Item 10, contract for SAP RISE software maintenance and support. Item 11, contract for MWBE SDVOB goal setting software. And item 12, award for AHC grants for certain projects listed in the agenda. Will?
I have a question. Item 10, it's an $11 million contract to transition the SAP solution that we have to the cloud, and we only got 1 bid back on it, and it's also upgrading to the latest available version. I'm just curious why there was only 1 bid that we got back, and sort of understanding the nature of this $11 million contract and what are we getting out of it?
Hi, Tom. Hi, Lisa.
Morning.
Yeah, we expected more bids. We thought we'd get up to 3. I think we don't know why other people didn't bid, obviously. I think probably the primary reason is that the price is really dictated by SAP. But we go through resellers to contract, and maybe the other resellers didn't feel that it was valuable enough for them to bid on it. The price, even though there was only 1 bid, the price is really what the price was going to be because it's dictated by SAP.
Okay, it just seemed like also a very short contracting period, like the RFP went out the 20, I think, was due back the 6th, whether that was one of the reasons for it. It seemed like a big contract with a short procurement period based on,
It wasn't an RFP process.
Oh, okay.
We went off of an OGS contract, and so there were pre-qualified vendors on that OGS contract. So there was a limited, I think there were either 3 or 4 vendors available for this. One vendor, we didn't hear anything from. The other vendor submitted a no bid response, and we either got a no bid or we just didn't hear from the other one.
And why is it that if we're upgrading like, I upgrade my phone, it happens overnight, and then we have like a transition to the cloud, like why it ends up being a 3-year contract?
It's a 3-year contract. This term is a 3-year contract. Obviously, we'll look to extend it after.
No, it just seems long for what the services that are being provided. That's what I wasn't sure.
Well, it's 3 years of the hosting of the environment.
Okay.
It's not just like they're not just
Yeah,
upgrading the software overnight on your phone.
So the first year is the implementation and the transition, and then it's years 2 and 3 on top of it for the ongoing hosting of it, which will need to continue as long as we
What's the
use
breakout between the sort of upfront migration versus the hosting? Do you have a sense for that?
The upfront migration is, we're still negotiating some of the discounts. So the amount in the proposal is a not to exceed amount, which will not exceed. The implementation is roughly $3 million, and then the balance is the annual subscription and service, yeah.
Okay. Will this be ultimately in perpetuity because of the fact?
As long as we use SAP as our operating system, yeah.
Okay.
I go back to the bid process. You said there was a pre-qualified list. How old was the pre-qualified list? And did that affect the fact that there was only one bid?
I'm not really sure, but this is the list that, if we're going to use an OGS contract, this is their list. They are looking to either extend or resolicit vendors on this list later on in the year.
What was your question? How old is the list?
Yeah, how old was the list? Because I'm wondering if that influenced.
If we were going to, the advantage to going through an OGS contract, it's a much shorter procurement
Right,
process.
yeah.
We were just, it wasn't a narrative that we provided, it was SKUs and pricing. I know that they are looking to renew that list at the end of this year.
The companies on the list are still pretty viable companies. Thundercat, which is the one that bid, is a pretty big.
Right, but I'm wondering if there are other newer companies that aren't on the list because the list is put together before those companies became.
It's certainly possible. One of the other ones was Dell. They're big companies that are still viable companies that are on the list. Certainly there could be other ones that have come up since, but.
Okay. Yeah, for me, it's like when we enter into these contracts, it's not a 3-year contract. This is a much longer contract, effectively, whether we approve it today or not. But this could be a $2.5 million contract for the next 25 years, right? If that's how we stay. So just to note that, these types of decisions have life cycle accounting things that we should maybe be thinking about as some of this decision making, because I think these add ultimately to the cost of operating the agency.
Yep. And the amounts in this are budgeted for in 2025. So the 2025 budget includes the cost of the implementation and the first year cost of the subscription and hosting. And then obviously the budgeting for 26, 27 and beyond will occur as well.
But I think to Joyce's point, I think some of the important part is perhaps in the next several years to work with OGS to make sure we're getting more qualified bids in. Because I think getting more than one bid is an important thing on some of the stuff, especially $2.5 million a year for hosting is,
No, especially it's till death do us part.
Yeah, and if that's how it's going to be.
Well, it sounds like they're going to potentially do their process at the end of this year, which means by the time we're at the end of our 3 years, they will certainly have a new list that we would use to potentially
Right.
bid.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, did we speak with SAP, so we knew these were going to SAP resellers, and I think we got some discounted rates, and we kind of knew where their starting point was before it got to the resellers, which then mark it up.
Yeah, the price negotiation really happens with SAP, and then they pass that on to the resellers.
So is this on-prem currently?
No, the current environment is hosted in one of our instances of AWS. And so we're moving it from there to SAP's hosted
What's the
environment.
current hosting cost from AWS?
So, AWS, we spend about $1 million a year, but the all-in costs of this are offset by the cost of AWS, the cost of the perpetual SAP licenses that we buy, as well as the cost of managing the AWS environment. So once we get beyond the implementation, annually our operating costs should go down, excluding some unexpected event that happens. But the $2.5 million would represent a reduction in our annual operating costs as it stands today.
I do want to say that it's been a challenge for OGS to negotiate contracts with these manufacturers. So it's a big incentive for us to use an OGS contract because we don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on outside counsel going through dealing with the tech companies, attorneys. All of the provisions have already been worked out.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Any other questions or comments on any of these 4 items that we're going to vote on? Okay. Well.
Okay, items 9, 10, and 11 are before the HFA board, and item 12 is before the AHC board. In each case, the resolution transmitted in connection with the item, assuming the motion and second previously recorded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried and the resolutions are adopted.
Thank you. Okay. The remaining 3 items on this agenda are information items. There will be no presentation unless requested. We'll now take the legal steps to adjourn the meetings. Note that the next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 10th, in 3 weeks.
Thank you. Assuming the motion and second previously recorded, all in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Motion is carried and the resolution, the meetings are adjourned. Thank
I would also note for the May meeting, which is on a Thursday, it's the same day as NYSAFA is doing their annual conference, which lots of staff go to and present at. So we will send out an email to see what day that week that's not Thursday works well for everybody.
Right. So
And
that's,
reschedule.
I think NYSAF is in Rochester.
No, it's in New York City this time.
The May meeting's in, I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up. I was thinking about the fall meeting. Right. So it's New York
Okay.
City. You're right. Sorry.
Do we have to move the fall one too?
Yes. That's
Okay.
why.
Oh, okay. So,
September meeting, yeah, but I think it's in Rochester this year.
Okay.
So, there's no Rochester office.
no, just Syracuse.
So we'd have to either get to Syracuse or
Change the date.
change the date.
Okay. We try in advance to set the dates, but then people plan
let's
stuff.
look
So,
at those September.
so more to come on that, but just looking ahead from April to May.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Hope.
Thank you.